Please, nobody switch on the sound, okay? Just switch off it. All of you. Никто не включает голос. Микрофон. Леша, вы здесь? Вы же были на первом, нет? Ну ладно. Я просто думал, первым потоком все топовцы пошли. You are welcome. Все подключаем микрофон. Видео тоже не обязательно. Так. Вижу Сымбат. Так, кто это? Тем, Ткип, Саулет, сидит, Фируза. Айсулу, наверное, да? Ткип. Хорошо, хорошо, что вы написали группы, потому что действительно немного путаница будет. Прошу никого не включать микрофон, вы только слушаете. Хорошо, у нас за 2 часа лекции будет длиться 40 минут. Это максимальное время, которое может позволить эта программа. И мы сейчас с вами начинаем час 0:06, закончим 46. Please, I ask all of the head of the groups just write down a list who is there on the lecture, okay? Старосты попрошу. Не слышно? Wait. Алло. Должно быть слышно. Пожалуйста, включите от меня мой звук. А ваш свой, пожалуйста, микрофон отключаем. ТМРП Асель. Ага, выключаем, правильно. Саулет отключаем. Можете включить видео, если хотите. Теперь слышно, да? Включаем мой голос, а свой, пожалуйста, микрофон отключаем. Okay, so today we'll take the HACCP, the principles. So of course you know some kind of the principles. Асель, вам не слышно, когда я вас выключаю звук или что? В чате можете написать. Так, Назирке Нури меня слышит, а Нара Кафарова почему-то не слышит. А, все слышно, да. Русской группе не слышно, пишет Виктория. Так, в чем может быть проблема? Да, в принципе, ни в чем проблемы нету, все в порядке. It should be all okay. Пожалуйста, старосты, вы список видите своих студентов, пожалуйста, отмечайте, ладно? Потом мне скинете список, я сделаю print screen. Пока у нас в группе сидят 58 участников. Здравствуйте. Я приветствую.
Меня слышно или нет?
Чей-то голос слышу, пожалуйста, отключитесь.
Это я?
Да, вы.
Блин, я не пойму, как отключить.
Вас почему-то не слышно, если отключить микрофон у нас.
Да?
Если я отключаю звук, получается, я и вас не слышу, и меня не слышно.
Да. Тогда сидите тихо.
Анара, ты тут из-за тебя нападает.
Все.
Блин, сейчас подождите.
Так. Может, наушник надеть? У меня также слышно только видео, нет звука. Назгуль, у вас работает, да? Окей. Все, давайте приступим. So,
Ладно.
Так, подождите, я что-то потеряла вас. Так. Так. Фотография вышла. Фотографию убираем. Ничего не трогаем, не рисуем на доске. Ну-ка, ребята. Пожалуйста, экран не трогаем. Все. Да, Игорь, почему поднимаем руку? Окей. Все, внимание, начинаем. So today we will take about introduction to HASP. So as you know that there is kind of a system which is providing the food safety, right? So these include all of the steps which is required for food safety. Всем видно экран? Бухарбаева, вам видно слайд, презентация? Да. Я только по губам читаю. Если слышно, пожалуйста, руку поднимите. Да, все, супер. Okay, so as per regulation, an article setting procedures based on the HACCP principle, so it's not an option for food business operators. So they will now learn about the 7 principles of HACCP, and then we will see in the detail the 12 steps to be followed in order to set up an HACCP plan, okay? Пишет кто-то в чате. Что происходит? Все слышно нормально? So, okay, thank you. Вижу ваши руки. Thank you. So, as an introduction to HACCP, we should remind that we have a lot of system which is providing the food safety, and GMP, it's good hygienic practice, good manufacturer practice. So all of these constitute essential prerequisites for the transition and implementation of HACCP, right? So, but we are saying that prerequisite HACCP implementation that mean that all of these good practices are in place, right? So, of course, the ideal situation is to set up a new factory following the rules described in guide to good practice relevant to the business. That's much easier than trying implement practice in a very old factory, whereas the floor is destroyed or many crisscrosses and so on. Okay, so but again, it doesn't make any sense to go for HACCP in a factory where rats nest on the raw materials and final products are contaminated by products entering this process. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense about it. And as a agricultural organization was risk-based inspection manual. So HACCP system is a system that identifies, evaluates, and control hazards that are significant for food safety. Okay, so good hygienic practices are all practices regarding to the conditions and measures necessary to ensure the safety and suitability of food at all stages of the food chain. So next is the HACCP system used to manage hygiene a given process by. So first is identification of potential hazards for food safety, and there is this methodology and system to manage hygiene, which needs thorough hazard analysis and proper management of critical control points, the CCP. Okay, so we will call it further as a CCP. The way it works. So the way it works, first to identify all potential hazards. Okay, at first step, of course, we should do and have any clue about it. Yeah. So then to define appropriate actions to ensure the control of these hazards, to make sure that these actions are effective, and review them all on a regular basis whenever there is this change in the process. So first is identification, determination, monitoring the control, and reviewing control. Okay, so when we talk about all of the systems, we say that we should have a monitoring and report it. Yeah, in the report we can see if it is more effective or not effective. Okay, so it's good making reviewing control procedures periodically makes whenever the operations change. Yeah, so of course when you're changing the technological process, you understand that there is can be some change in the temperature, maybe pressure and so on. So we should take all of this operational change and critical control points. It's the step which control can be applied and essential to prevent or eliminate of food safety hazard or reduce to unacceptable level. Okay. So next is, as you can see, that there is a 7 principles. So first principles included as a 4 key elements. So we have just mentioned this implementation of hazard is based on the 7 principles. So some of the key elements being split into 2 or 3 principles. Okay. So the overchain principle that we use to call principle 0. So that's actually 8 principles, not 7. Yeah. So first is just the call of principle. So it's about human aspects and production parameters. We all time say that human factors is very valuable point of all of the system, right? So if you have a, for example, perfect cleaned system, but if your staff not trained or not following the I don't know system, so it of course wouldn't be system just working. Okay, so about these principles, and first we are taking about the hazard analysis, and then the second principle is CCP determination, to check whether we are dealing with the CCP, with the hazard, and then can be managed to good practice. So principle third is defines the critical limits of the CCP. Of course, it's depending on the food product or technological processes, we will define the limits of the critical limits, right? So on the beginning of all of the production, of course, there is some raw materials, and we couldn't change anything in this point, right? Except if we are beginning from the farm. So okay, so there is some regulation point, but if we have a raw materials just obtained, so there is no any change. So we are just taking the fact of this about safety of this raw materials, and then we are using in the furthermore technologies, right? So between the safe of the product and raw materials, of course, it's the any exchangeable matter. So principle fourth describe the monitoring system for CCP, and then next step is gives the corrective actions in case of lost control of the CCP. Okay, so just first is identify, determine, monitoring, and then come corrective actions. So we should do something with it. And we could, the further principle as a six, we can verify this system and answering the question if it does it work. Okay, so if it doesn't work, so on a regular basis, as a principle 7 is establishment of an effective system for registration of products and data that documents the HACCP. So as a preliminary, we are taking all these keys. So it's the identification hazard, control of hazard, monitoring, and reviewing of the documentation. Okay.
Okay.
So now we will take the 12 steps, which is describe all of the 7 principles. Okay, so first is select the HACCP team. How we can do it? So if you have a factory or some organization, you just have taken all of the employees which is working there, because they have several areas they're responsible for them, and all of them can collect all of the information, right? So if you're just a technologist, you couldn't maybe some access to clarify of the documentation and so on, right? So we need manage all of this system. So first is select the HACCP team, and then describe the product. Yeah. So depending on the product, of course, it will be have a differences. So it is intended to use draft of flow diagram and followed by on-site verification, and all of these 5 steps included for the human and the production parameters. Okay, human aspects and production parameters. And then for the next step, from step number 6, regarding to the principle number 2 as a hazard analyzer. So to hazard analysis, we can identify and make a preventive measures, criticity, and so on. Okay, so criticity for raw materials in this is 1 point, and then you have a pre-technological product. Of course, you will have another numbers, right? So preventive measures also could be done. Okay, so as a preventive measures, можно переводить как входной контроль. Yeah, so you have preventive measures as for raw materials and the other products. So criticity will be depending on all these results. Okay, so we have a lot of talking about, for example, in the dairy products technology, that if you have in the raw materials a lot of amount of the bacteria. So we couldn't just hope on the pasteurization or sterilization that all of this bacteria will be sterilized. Yeah. So we know that there is an effective of this technological step. Okay. So preventive measures is done before this technological process. So before collecting these raw materials, maybe you will have some preventive measures. I don't know about the storage, transportation. So you should do something with this to improve the quality, right? And then just we can talk about the criticity. Next step is identify CCP. Того мы уже по ХАСП разбираем, да, что мы выбираем сначала группу, которая будет работать. Туда входят все члены, работники, да, которые работают на этой фирме. Дальше мы определяем по типу этого продукта, насколько это опасно, насколько мы можем что-то изменить, да. То есть, если мы хотим это стерилизовать, а на самом деле у нас, если это просто пастеризованное молоко, тогда это уже невозможно. Так ведь? И таким образом мы доходим до, например, identify CCP. So when we are identifying the CCP, for example, for the several technologies, the temperature is the main task, right? So it's the main parameters which is changing and then giving the as a CCP critical limits. Okay, so as an identification, we are using determining this critical control point. And then we have established critical limits. So it's a monitoring system for CCP and corrective actions in the case of loss of control CCP. So establish a monitoring system for CCP and corrective actions in the case of loss control and establish verification procedures. Ну, как видите, мы, то есть эти 7 принципов можем разделить на 12 шагов. Да? Если мы не пропустим ни один шаг из этого, мы можем себе обеспечить систему HACCP. So all these 12 steps will be explained in detail during this course. Okay? Меня хорошо слышно?
Да, хорошо, нормально.
Все, супер. Okay. Next is the EU regulation by 852. So it applies the entire the food chain. So in this course, so we could take a lot of materials about the EU regulation. So it's all of them highly just recommended, right? So it's the refer to EU regulation, European. So we heard, for example, a lot about the Codex Alimentarius, but we can't find any factors in our country. For example, any factor which is using Codex Alimentarius, right? So they can just, as a recommendation, use this information and the declaration of all of the production facilities, and the accreditation is compulsory. So it says that the primary responsibility in terms of food safety is food business operators, right? То есть мы до этого тоже говорили, что всегда у нас была сертификация пищевых продуктов, а мы теперь перешли на декларирование. То есть вся ответственность лежит на производителе. So they shall comply with a good practice, so they must use procedures based on HACCP principles. Use guides on the good practice is recommended, and staff training has to be done and documented. Okay, it's not enough just be done. So declaration of all of the facilities and accreditation, and then primary responsibility of operators terms on the safety, compliance with good hygiene practice, procedures based on the HACCP principles, and so on. Okay? So main is the staff training. So while assessing risk and setting up actions for HACCP system, in addition to EU regulation requirements which are more about results than means. Yeah, so it's very helpful to ask yourself the following question: is what I am recommending and setting up necessary and appropriate on the grounds of the safety and suitability of food for consumption? Okay, so that's an abuse and a very important question in order to avoid making too much. Okay, so we will should be available to answer this question. So while risks and setting up actions for HACCP system, in addition to Euro, so we has a, for example, two different types. Yeah, so it's if it is catering, so just new prepared food product consumed by the consumers. But what about the canned, for example? Yeah, it's just for compare. So in canned food product, we know that there is a long term of the storage. So it's the less food safety. So it's, for instance, very often appropriate to have an air filtration and very strong and specific hygiene when it's about producing, for example, beef minced sticks. Yeah, so it's the raw material and you're using directly. Yeah, so it should be necessary, sterilize more and be clean. But what about the probably necessary to have a, if it is necessary to have such rules when it's about the tuna cans? So we know that in the canned product we have sterilization, so we can appropriate the food quality. But in minced meat, which is consumed directly, so we should be careful. So we are determining if it is necessary or not. Yeah, so what is the necessary and appropriate on grounds of safety and suitability of food for consumption? Okay, so it was taken from the Codex Alimentarius. And if we are following the next steps, so the 7 principles can be completed by these 12 steps. So being more or less completed one after the others, right? So we will be explaining in detail all of this step and why it's really why is it so important, for example. So first step is HACCP team. So it's the management commitment, team building and training, budget and equipments. Yeah. Then completing data. So it can be historical, epidemiological, etiological, clinical standards, and regulations and technological data. So all of the recording, the data collection, we can by the monitoring avoid the risks which were before. Yeah, so when we are changing the technological process, maybe some properties which were destroyed by these steps maybe can be returned to this technological process. So it's about historical, right? So next is planning. It's frequency of the session of teamwork. So how long and how many times in a year or in the month should this planning take a work. So schedule for implementation and following steps. we are using defining the field of study. So because setting up a HASP project, the first step is to setting up the team and all necessary tools related with good project management. So of course, don't forget the prerequisite that a proper implementation of good hygiene and manufacturing practices. So in this, good practices are not already in place. So these first steps of HASP can be done though, but good practice have to be the first thing that to do while planning the project activities. Okay. So as per quality, quality system implementation and also all important project, everything starts with the commitment of the management. So this commitment has also to be formal, with letter distributed to all staff and signed by the top manager, right? So the hospice team has then to be constituted with staff from different services. So sometimes external consultants or experts can be come to just consult. So often it's not always the staff of the HASP team has to be trained. Yeah, so external experts also can do this work. So next, HASP team also defines the necessary means of the budget for HASP setting up. So it's often about computer, printer, the payment of the external consultant, the time of the HASP team staff, etc. So before planning the activities, it's important to comply all relevant data regarding the sector of the activity. So if you are changing the technological process, or you are changing the raw materials, or I don't know, so just a cleaning or some disinfectants, maybe liquids. So all of these steps should be regarding the sectors of the activity. And so then you can collect the data and evaluate the risk, which is notable for this data. Yeah. So data collection doesn't end after step 1, so it shall continue for years. So the planning shall define the frequency of the team work session and schedule for the implementation of the 11 other steps. So last, the HASP team shall define the field of study and notable whether all factory products are concerned or only part of them. So such a product range, so maybe just adding some aromatizers or some kind of the food additives, and they wouldn't be necessary to take all of the technological process, because you're just adding to make, for example, for aromatic or maybe the coloring agents. So you define the field of the study, okay, which is notably all factory products. So step number 2, it's the describing the products, right? So the second step starts when the product or range of the products are chosen. So it's about the describing them and also all raw materials required to produce the final products. So the descriptions go as far as possible with the general characteristics, composition, physical, chemical characteristics, shelf life and storage conditions, packaging, labeling, and all of the steps. So special attention obviously paid to the parameters having potential impact on food safety. So if you have as a final product and an intermediate product, if this required, so general characteristic as a name, composition, volume, structure, rheology, and so on. Okay. So for the physical chemical characteristics is pH, activity of water, redox potential, preservatives, which is adding modified atmosphere, and so on. And then coming packaging and labeling. So in the packaging, we are using all of the physical chemical characteristics, right? So just keep the quality improve. And by the labeling, we should define all of the steps which we are included in this. Yeah. So if we have this modified atmosphere in this packaging, of course we should mention in the labeling. And then storage condition and shelf life of the distribution. So how it should be stored, at what temperature, what is the humidity and pressure. And of course, there is some kind of products which is storage for a long time when it's deeply freezed, and then just a frigid, right? So it's about 0 and 4 degree of the centigrade. So as a raw materials, so it's describing the products. So in of course, we are taking the intermediate products, which is using as a raw materials. So formulation of all of the percentage of each raw material used. Okay, so if you have as a ingredient which is concluded, for example, for bread, so we know that the mostly we are using flour. So and adding a small number of the baking powder. So of course we will take in account more about the quality, about the flour, yeah, because it's about the amount, yeah. And then physical chemical characteristics also, the raw materials, because we know that by the changing physical chemical properties, it could be damaged the quality or the food safety, maybe can be changed in this case. So also there is a kind of pH, activity of water, redox potential, viscosity, particle size, concentration and solution, and additives. For concentration and particle size, it's about, for example, what is the using sodium chloride, yeah. So if it is as a stone, or the particle size is milled. So it's the making a differences, and about the concentration, of course. So storage temperature, shelf life, determination by own experience, bibliography, challenge tests, predictive models, but take into account the real life of the food product. For instance, breakdown in cold chain. Yeah, so processing, preparation, and mode of the users. So this establishment of the shelf life can be made by many means, such as a predictive modeling tools, challenge tests using own experience. Again, most important is the result that product has to be safe for whole shelf life. Yeah. So we said maybe food quality. Oh, sorry. Maybe food safety will be changed, but quality also vice versa. If there is any change in the quality, but it could be change in the safety. Okay, so validation of the shall take into account and what can happen in the real condition, and such as several breakdowns in the cold chain, for instance. So this step is proposed to be rather quick as well, good manufacturing practice. Okay, as I can see that there is about 73 participants, right? Окей, вижу. Алия Ирикенова, Жаркон, Любовь. Сергей сидит по вправке, Гульхар, Шунспек, Назирке. Анна Кириченко, Айдана Азмбекова, Темирлан, Медетбек Камшат, Людмила Коровикова, Скобышина Виктория. Окей, thank you very much. Так, сделаю print screen. See you next week. But at the practical work, we'll take some tasks and we will done also by the online, and you should attach it by the distance courses in the university system, okay? So then we can check out if it is something. Yes, fine.
Апай, сіз белгілейсіз ба?
I'm trying, but I ask all of the staff to make a sign, okay? Я сделала принт-скрин всех, кто присутствовал сегодня, и Старс все же попрошу сделать этот список присутствующих. Возможно, кто-то уже из-за связи, не знаю, вышел или что-то может произойти ему. Но я смотрю, многие зашли. 73, 72 участников. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Салон запай.
Thank you. Салон запай.
Салон запай.
Салон зар. Bye.